Good morning.
Morning. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
And welcome back to our INTEA breakfasts. Today, we are going to talk about soft skills and people skills. Right. So we promised that today we were going to talk about soft skills and hard skills, how to train them, why soft skills actually matter. And I want to start by kind of complaining to you about a misconception about soft skills that I hear a lot. And the misconception is that soft skills are soft. This distinction between hard and soft skills to me always sounded like I'm a person who was very good at mathematics, and went to business school and always was trained to look down on people skills and then stuff like that. And the more I work in business, the more I work with people in a variety of different ways, the more I realized that soft skills is what actually matters. And that's why I don't even like the name soft, right? We were historically taught to assume that anything hard is good, right? You find a hard stone, you can kill an enemy with it. You can hunt. Hard stuff is good stuff. It's important for survival. And soft stuff is, it's probably gone bad.
Yeah.
And it's too, so don't touch it, don't eat it. So we are kind of wired to assume that somehow hard stuff is the real stuff, and soft stuff is somehow this fluffy stuff that you don't really have to think about. But that is absolutely not true. Absolutely, like it couldn't be further from the truth if we tried, and we actually have proof for that. So according to Harvard research, 85% of job success actually comes from the soft skills or people skills. And I actually prefer calling that people skills because that removes this sort of idea of inferiority.
Yeah.
So
Fluffiness.
like fluffiness, right? Because people, everyone pretty much understands that it's all about people. You can be as smart as you can be in your job, but if you're an asshole, pardon my French, you probably won't get too far. Or as they have found out in a different research, that most large company CEOs exhibit sociopathic traits, which again is a people skill of its own. Yes, it's kind of an evil trait, but again, it's not about them being much smarter. It is about them treating other people in a unique and consistent way, so to say.
But but here we'll not today we'll not talk so much about these personality as the defining traits of your career, of course, and some being a sociopath, as I understand, it's something that you are born with, very much.
Not a trainable skill.
Not a trainable thing, but a lot of it is trainable.
Yes.
And today we'll spend most of our time talking on how you really train different kinds of skills, specifically people skills, because there is, again, a lot of misconception about that as well. Let's start and probably recognize that the world has changed.
Yes.
And I think if 100 years ago, I think those hard skills were what separated a person who can work in a factory from the person who cannot work in a factory. Then today, a factory is a kind of a factory of robots.
Yeah, it's actually our whole education system, starting from public schools, and then continuing with the universities, and then continuing with most of the stuff that you are taught at the workplace, has been conceived in early 1800s, when the Industrial Revolution started, and suddenly all of the peasants had to be moved to the cities to work in the factories. And to work in the factories, what do you need? You need math. Pretty much you need to read and write, and hard skills of mathematics and engineering, and knowing what to strike and how to operate machinery. And then as we progressed, moved into the offices, there's more complex equipment, there's computers all of a sudden, there's all this stuff that distinguishes, a successful office worker from someone who works in the field, and by that time, from someone who works in a factory, right?
Yeah.
Right? It was always about hard skills. However, today, if you go into a supermarket, you will find out that there are much less cashiers than before, because everything has been replaced by automatic self-checkouts and whatnot. If you go to an airport, you will find out that you can fly. Well, now you can't do anything anyhow, but presumably, if you agree to all the conditions that you have to meet to fly today. If you fly from Riga, let's say, to Frankfurt, you will not meet a single person outside of actual people in the airplane. You will go through automatic checkouts, you will go through automatic check-ins, you can check in your baggage automatically and so on. You don't meet people, those people are gone. They are essentially replaced by robots. If you look at even creative jobs like developers and designers and even authors and writers, anyone in the marketing industry, you will find out how many jobs have been replaced by IT systems, by project planners, by collaboration systems, by design systems. How much of that is aided by automation now? It's incredible. You just need less people, but the people who remain and that you actually need are the ones who actually can solve problems, for example, or interact with people. Now, if you could have a cashier who doesn't even speak a language, all that cashier does is actually beeps the product on the counter, checks that it's the same product and that you're not stealing something inside that box and so on, and moves on. They don't have to interact with you. They have been replaced by robots, and the one cashier that is left out of 10 is the one who solves your problem. Well, this thing is mislabeled.
Right.
Solve my problem. I'm angry. Diffuse my anger. Help me. Make me leave with a great opinion of your store. That is a people skill.
Absolutely. And this is, I think, also one of the misconceptions when people think about the digital revolution, that the instant kind of reaction to it is that we have to teach people new hard skills, how to use a computer, how to use this system or that system, which is, of course, part of the story. But a more important part of the story is that the digital revolution puts even more emphasis on the people skills, because these are the jobs that cannot be replaced by a machine. Exactly the ones that have a huge emphasis on the people skills, because as we can see, artificial intelligence has not produced us artificial managers, leaders, and customer service representatives. And it's
except in politics, I think. Some of our politicians are definitely produced by artificial intelligence or lack thereof.
Yeah, but which will require this upskilling and reskilling, and a big part of this reskilling is actually on the soft side or people side.
Exactly. And just to wrap up the intro, there is one more reason why this figure is so high. There is the technical skills, they develop today so fast,
right,
that there is no chance for actually learning them all, right?
No.
Previously, like in 1960s, you could have learned calculus and some engineering and maybe some early software in university. Then you would come to your job, you get trained a little bit more, and then you can work for 20 years pretty much doing the same thing. Today, anything that you've learned in a university as a designer or as an engineer or as a biochemist, as a medical student, for example, will have changed, a couple of times over by the time you get to your second year in your work career. And then in your career, in the next 20 years, you will have to learn every month. It's changing all the time. And at that speed, you cannot just, train all of that. You have to train people to sort of be untrained. You have to train them on being able to learn. We'll get to that. I actually have have a slide on that. You have to train people on how to learn and how to keep up to date and how to solve complex things which are new to them and they don't have a solution in a textbook that you've read in school and so on. And that is why those skills, the skills of being, there's this VUCA world, the volatile, unpredictable, chaotic world. This new world, it actually requires people skills, and people includes yourself, your own skills, rather than hard skills. Hard skills are unpredictable. You cannot train for them. You cannot even guess what skills those will be.
But you
so
still
have
to, but of course you still have to, kind of, they do not disappear, and you still have to learn those skills, but this is not the essence. You have to be able to learn those skills better. So that's
okay. So welcome those who have just joined. We have just finished our intro and we talked about how important people skills are and how people skills gained importance because we sort of successfully automated a lot of stuff, and that those things that can't be automated are the ones that fall under the category of soft skills. And we have actually research from World Economic Forum last year, it's 18, which listed top 10 skills, and you can try and guess those, and we talked about some of those already. Top 10 skills that you will need in the next 5 years, like something by 2022, I think. So we start with what we've already mentioned. Yes, analytical thinking and innovation. Robots can't do that. No, sorry, they can't. Active learning, what I've talked about, right? You have to train people to learn actively, to not sit and wait until someone comes to them and teaches them how to solve a problem, but actually go out and find ways and solutions and train themselves all the time. Creativity and initiative, things that again, cannot be scripted and automated. Technology design, things to create new technologies, not to learn existing technologies, but create new stuff. Critical thinking. Well, I think we all know, like, critical thinking is something, in the world of the abundance of information, false information sometimes, super important. Complex problem solving, again, solving things. Like when I started this, like even before I started INTEA, there was about this gap year between my corporate career and INTEA, where I was ideating what I could do, and I spoke to a friend who was like a role model for me, a business person, and he said that business is actually finding answers to questions you don't know how to formulate. Right? It's not questions that you wouldn't expect. It's not a problem that is something that you didn't expect. It's a problem that you can't even describe, and you have to solve it. And for the past 12 years, it's been pretty much about that, right? You solve things that need to be solved before you even describe them. Leadership and social influence, and that is actually also I'm not a huge fan of generation theory. I don't think that generations exist anymore in the sense that they have been formulated in at the beginning of 20th century. But I would say that the new generation of people, and that does not have to do anything with age. The new generation of people actually values social influence and social capital as one of the top 2 skills that people need to have. If you talk to today's students, year 1, year 2 students, they will say that the person that they value is the person who can actually make friends and make connections and network and so on. And networking has always been an important skill, but today it's even more important because you cannot make up for lack of networking skills with high technical skills, because technical skills are not as valued anymore, and because they're not worth to a corporation, for example. Emotional intelligence, something that I think have done a lot of work to train myself on, because again, as a very technical person, I always thought that anything can be solved by reason,
Yeah.
There's a logical approach to a problem, and if you go through logical steps, the problem will be solved.
Yeah.
Then I got married. And you have to, and then I got kids, and this is where, like, by the time I thought I figured out what emotional intelligence is, it's absolutely true. There are so many situations in life, in workplace, when as a leader or as a manager or as a colleague, you have to kind of stop thinking rationally and just go with the feeling. And I, as a super technical person, always thought that it's something that is inferior. It's not a skill. It's like a cheat or something.
Yeah.
But that is actually what is required, and you have to train these kind of people like me, to do that in a systematic way in your company.
Exactly.
So a couple more. I think I had 10 of those. Reasoning and ideation. Again, that is kind of the other side of, actually, sometimes you have to train people on putting their ideas into words and getting them over to the other person. And finally, systems analysis and evaluation. Basically, deconstruction and synthesis of processes and problems.
So as I think we all can see, there's not so much hard stuff in a traditional sense here, right? So
well,
it is there.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
But like, you have to have a certain amount of knowledge or skill or algorithms when you do, like, there's an algorithm to creativity. There's things such as design thinking, for example. There is definitely algorithm to reasoning. There are algorithms to emotional intelligence of how you approach that, but it's not just that.
Yeah, let's talk about what's in there.
Okay, and one bad news.
Bad news. Yeah.
Bad news before we get to the juicy stuff is that most of the people are very dissatisfied with how their organizations are training those people skills, right? And the answer to that is actually in neuroscience. We disregard neuroscience and we don't talk about it enough when we talk about things like training and instructional design and so on. But it all actually comes down, remember that monkey in the first slide? It actually comes down to how our brain is wired, and that brain is wired in a pretty unique way, and it's not very straightforward. So neuroscience, we talk about things like prefrontal cortex, we talk about things like amygdala, we talk about hippocampus, all the complex stuff. Yeah. But in fact, if we sort of just boil it down to actionable things, it's the what, the feel, and the how, right? The prefrontal cortex is responsible for the information, for things that
you remember,
we'll learn and remember, this hard skill stuff. The amygdala is responsible for our emotions, for emotional response. And the hippocampus is responsible for the long-term memory, behavioral patterns, and for things that kind of get ingrained into us. And most of the learning, unfortunately, not only in content focuses on the what, but also in the ways that it's trained or taught, focuses on just this prefrontal cortex part, the way that it likes to work.
Yeah, basically, when we want somebody to get some problem-solving skills, very often, and we understand that there is a people skill to it, of course, right? Then very often what we see, the whole training program, and especially e-learning, will be designed as if we're training it as a hard skill. So basically, we'll be, first of all, training to remember what it is, and testing. Have you remembered what is problem-solving? How do you do step 1, step 2? But not actually dealing it in the right way. So we will talk about each of these pieces separately and then put it all together, to give you a kind of framework.
But if there's one thing you want to take away from today, or if you drop out in 20 seconds, then just remember that hard skills are trained by the what, by facts and knowledge, and soft skills, we train them in exactly the same way. I'm meeting the other two crucial, important parts of the puzzle. it's the emotions and the emotional response and immersiveness, and it's the how, the behavioral part of that, the actual ingraining of those skills into people's behavior. Because my favorite example that I bring up in every instructional design training that I do is smoking. Like type a plus in the chat if you smoke or have smoked. Or, you know, if you don't get, can you check for me? Can you check?
Yeah, let's go to the chat.
Yeah,
there are some coming out. Yeah, right. Yes, no. Okay.
Excellent. And you know, you probably know someone who smoked. Now, there is not a single person, I think, in the world who doesn't know that smoking is bad for them. They have the facts. Everyone knows that smoking, you know, causes health problems. Everyone feels, they know for the fact, they actually know that, you know, smoking is bad for them, but they keep doing that. You know, the knowledge does not translate to behavioral change. If you want to train people on, you know, being kinder or nicer or more responsive or more better, to be better leaders and so on, they will know, or better salespeople. You know, the most important people skills actually skill to sell. But you know, they will know all that stuff. They will not do that. Yeah. Just like with smoking, everyone knows that smoking is bad. Everyone still smokes. All right, so let's dive into those three things, into those three parts, and let's decipher them. All right, so the what, it's about the facts, the thinking, the cognition, the cognitive abilities. It's about information, processes, algorithms, facts. And the feeling is about emotions, about interpersonal stuff. It's cooperation. It's about cooperation, teamwork, things like that. It's in a way, you know, if we circle back to neuroscience, it involves those mirror neurons, the propensity of people to copy other people's behavior. So if you like, you know, I will jump ahead of myself, but one of the important parts of training on the feel side is showing how stuff is done, and then we will try and copy that, because we are wired to copy other people's behavior and, you know, the behavior of the group, and, you know, not just being told about that. And the how is actually about the behavioral patterns. It's about long-term memory. It's about ingraining that knowledge into our everyday behavior. Kind of like going, if you think of going to the gym, right? You have to know what the exercises you do. You have to be motivated to actually do those exercises, and you actually have to get into the habit. And you know how everything breaks if you don't have one of those things. But if we are corporate training people and we want people to go to the gym, we will just keep telling them about the benefits of gym, right? We will keep teaching them on all sorts of different exercises. We will only focus on the first part. Time and time again, we see that, you know, when we try to teach people skills, again, sales, leadership, management.
Yeah, so many programs. And of course, a lot of programs, what I see, they do kind of try to embed those components that work with the feel side and the how side. But even if they do so, the proportions are just ridiculous. 90% of the time you work with the what, you explain different theories, leadership styles, blah, blah, blah. And then you spend pyramids, yeah, and whatever. But in the end, you only spend, you know, 10, 15 minutes on the practice. Yeah. And this is not how it works and becomes effective.
And there's even a bigger problem, which we'll get again to in a second. So let's now deconstruct and go, you know, deeper into how these things need to be trained and what we have to keep in mind, because again, we cannot assume that we train the what optimally every time as well.
Not at all. If what the neuroscience tells us is that our memory is wired to forget things. Because we cannot remember everything that happens with us, everything we learn. So we are kind of wired to forget. This is a survival technique, basically. Yes. But very often when we are doing some kind of a training, this is exactly what we want to avoid. We want people to remember things.
Yes.
So One thing I see very often is that we dump a lot of information on a person,
Yes.
like in 1 hour training.
Yeah, we just assume.
We just assume you give content, you receive content, transaction completed, they know it all, right? So, and then we do a test and people
Upload completed.
Upload completed, yeah. But what the neuroscience tells us is that the only way to make people remember something is to allow them for reflection. So we have this attention span or this ability of working memory kind of amount that we can utilize, and this is very, very limited. And the rule of thumb is 4 or 5 minutes of uptake, and then you have to do something with that information to remember it. So
right.
Because we only remember things that we do reflect on, that we process, that we utilize.
This is why actually notes work. This is why everyone wants slides from the presentation. It allows you to
recollect,
like power through this stuff that you will endure in today's 40 minutes or something, and then and then it's gone, and you feel like you start unlearning this stuff. You get out of this breakfast, and by lunch that you probably remember one thing maybe, and that thing was important, and I think I've written it down somewhere. Yeah,
exactly.
So it's just this is why this Zoom trainings as training method do not work that well. And even if you do online courses, you just dump information, it's no use. So instead, what needs to be done, the information needs to be separated into smaller chunks, and then you have to be given time for it to sink in, and then a little bit more, and then sink in. Think of of a layered cake. You put a layer, let it kind of stiffen up, put another one, let it stiffen up, another one. If you pour everything, you will just get a hot mess. And this is how our brains work, and this is what we disregard in training for facts. And this is probably what we are best at fixing as INTEA, as instructional designers, when we take this wrong approach that a lot of experts, the information dump, and we rewrite it into more structured, better prepared pieces for consumption, digested, so to say. And we help avoid cognitive load. Cognitive load is very simple. When you listen to hard facts, you cannot do anything else, right? You cannot listen to hard facts in the background while you're washing dishes and so on. You might have an illusion that you're remembering, but you will not remember anything. You can listen to something that is not about hard facts. You can listen to emotional stuff. You can listen to music. You can listen to people talking. You can, but again, you will process their emotions rather than the stuff that they're talking about. So don't listen to TED conferences. Listen to stand-up when you're washing dishes. TED conferences makes no sense in that sense.
But this is again, this is the part that kind of good instructional designers and experienced training managers, specialists know.
Yes.
Without knowing neuroscience, they have this feedback, because this is something people give a lot of feedback on.
And
you can easily try and solve it. But the feel.
The feel is something that is, like you said, is this 10 or 15% of stuff that is included on top of all that information in a course typically. And the feel is about immersion. The feel is about believing. The feel is about putting yourself in a different person's shoes, or that different person can be you in the future, right? It's role playing. You're training salespeople, and you try to role play with them. Okay, you're the sales guy. Sell this pen to me, as they say, right? Or fire me. Please don't fire me. Or here's an employee who has screwed up. Explain to them what happened and how to fix that.
Giving feedback
giving feedback, stuff like that. There is a lot of role play involved. But role play is not very scalable. So instead, you can use scenario-based training. You can use storytelling. Anything that makes people immersed into this training. Anything that takes them away from their existing context and puts them into this future desirable context and makes their brain kind of believe. This is why actually the new immersive technologies like virtual reality prove especially good in training for soft stuff and even softer stuff than soft stuff, right? Because sales skills and leadership skills is, soft skills. But, public speaking or not being afraid of flying.
Yeah, this gets as soft as it gets. There's not so much hard stuff you can give
about,
there that will help you.
Exactly.
Right?
It's about making people feel different, and this is actually where VR shows exceptional results in those kind of almost psychoanalytical aspects of our work, right? The things about like changing our feelings about stuff rather than even behavior.
Yeah. And I would expect a lot of training specialists and people who are even less experienced producing trainings, doing trainings. They would say that this is something that has to happen face to face. And the answer is, of course, if you can set it up in a face-to-face environment, or better, even you can force people to do that on their job and practices in their daily routines, that's brilliant. But we can also do a lot of stuff online. And my argument is that, look, we have all read literature. Yeah.
Like fiction, you mean?
Fiction, yeah. Different kind of literature, fiction being a good example. And you know what? This literature does make people change in a certain way. It does allows them to immerse, but you don't have a real person in front of you. You have a piece of paper, but still you can achieve certain kind of shifts and
everyone has that movie that has
changed their life, or
well, maybe not life, but changed how you think about things, how like you made how you discover something, right?
Yeah, how you interact with other people.
Yeah, or a book or a song sometimes, and those things, they did not use facts. Right?
Yeah.
It was about feelings and immersing yourself into a situation and tricking your brain into living through that. And that is what often misses. And this is what we try to kind of bring in, with crumbles, like, okay, here's a character to your sales skills. Well, this is John, and this is his first day at work. And he meets Jane, and Jane is struggling with this new client. And John, can you help her? And while you're helping her get through that situation with the client, you will learn about the ABCD of selling, and so on. That is already a storytelling. This is often very kind of poor attempt at storytelling, but it still is. We kind of naturally feel in learning that we need that. Somehow when we just put in the facts, we feel that it doesn't work, and this is what we actually ignore. We ignore a huge part. It even has a name, amygdala. Yeah. The huge part of your brain just is ignored if you just give the facts. So right, this is the field. This is the kind of the other leg of that stool. And finally, it's the how, and this is actually where the puzzle is.
And what we see, at least in my kind of projects, in what I see with my customers very often, is that a lot of the time when there is a big training project, it's somehow related to behavior change. Would that be implementation or enforcement of corporate values, or customer service, or leadership? It's not only about the field that people can learn how to do it. Very often you ask a salesperson, could you demonstrate me how you would upsell this pen?
All right.
Right. And they can demonstrate that. They know the kind of the soft side of it. They know how to deal with it. They know how to deal with objections. They can demonstrate that. But when you send a mystery shopper in their shop, you'll see that it is not part of their behavior.
Yeah.
And therefore, very often,
I would say that it's even worse with management. At least at least with salespeople, they have a very straightforward incentive attached to it typically.
And
but
they are
with
easier to
management,
control.
yeah, if you ask your managers, like, how would you give this type of feedback, they will explain you the feedback, and they will role play with you if need be, and so on. They're like so nice at that. And then if you send in a mystery employee, or you have another like,
or you just
do
a 360 evaluation, and you see that managers kind of
don't practice what they preach.
Don't practice what they preach.
And we're back to the smoking example. Like, everyone knows stuff, and they can simulate it, but they do not do that in real life, right?
Yeah. So how do we go about it? The neuroscience tells us that the only way to change behavior, pretty much, is continuous, constant feedback. My example would be, and yeah, those who have kids can relate to it, is that nothing changes after you first time give your kid a feedback, put your dirty dishes in the sink or in the dishwasher. It will only happen after 5, 8, 10 times, depending on how embedded certain previous or behavior is. And this is what the neuroscience tells us as well, that this is how behavior changes. It changes over time with constant feedback, with stick and carrot. So it's a very small movement towards a better behavior.
All right. So essentially, to change behavior, you have to, well, first of all, not to expect it to change overnight by people going through a course or a training.
No.
Especially if that training, even if that training was very immersive and role playing and very, very believable, and had all the good facts in it and so on, it will not change overnight. It will change slowly, kind of like in ways that you gain muscle or you learn a new physical skill. It will change through repetition and feedback, in the sense that you do something desirable, and you get rewarded for it. Like, you try and upsell something to a customer, and you actually upsell, or you don't upsell something and you don't get the extra money, and someone ideally has to remind you about that. Someone has to tell you that, okay, you've handled this customer, that was great, and that was not. And you have to do that time and time again, and you have to give it time. And this change will be gradual, and it has to be repeated, and so on. And it only repeats if you have this external feedback, ideally as close to the fact of you doing or not doing something right, as close as possible. Now the problem is, how do you achieve that in e-learning or online training and such?
Yeah, very often when we approach behavior change in a given company, there is a straightaway kind of assumption that we with training can only give you those facts. We can only explain you what to do, and then it's in your hand, in your manager's hand, whatever. Yes. So we can basically, at that point, training people can stand up and leave the meeting. So behavior, not our department. We're leaving. Yeah. So this is very much an instinct kind of, I feel there, the instant reaction there. However, I think there are two things that training people can do. One is approach this project not as a training project, and not as a we will do the training and the rest is somewhere in other person's responsibility, but to think about it as a behavior change campaign.
Yeah.
And in that campaign, you have to have all these three elements. Yeah, you still have some factual basis you have to explain. You have to make sure people kind of play it through, or have those stories that we get into their feelings, we get there on the emotional basis, and then you have to think how this feedback is going to happen. There are a couple of ways that we tried successfully. One, the IT systems, the learning management systems, social platforms can be used to nudge people.
Yes.
You can nudge them for certain behaviors. You can nudge them for trying it out, because very often, if it's a valuable skill and people try it out a couple of times and they get the result, it will become the habit, right? So nudging is one.
So okay, if you're training people on something, don't just think about the training, that has all the facts and emotions in it. Okay, they've trained. Think of it as a longer campaign, and make sure that after they've trained, they get into this funnel of, let's say, weekly emails. Like every Monday they get an email. Here's a tip of how you can practice this new managerial technique this week, right? Or every Friday they get a question. Have you done this week? And what are you like? Time management, for example, or time planning is an important soft skill actually. You can email people every Friday and say, okay, well, are you satisfied or are you dissatisfied with how you managed your time this week? What can you do better next week? And here's a tip for you: plan this and this and this right now, so that on Monday you don't have to do something like that, and do that times and times over until it sticks. And it comes from sales. I sell software. It's my other job as a CEO of a software company. And I've recently read that most people who try to approach you by email do that like 3 or 4 times and they quit. But on average, the sale happens after the 8th email. So,
be patient.
So be patient. Yeah. And again, think about it, like you can't do every Monday campaign for every course that someone has completed. They will get to 50 emails and start ignoring you and so on. But embed those things. Doesn't have to be emails. Okay, I'll get to examples. I have a couple of examples, but what was the other thing? So one was this nudging.
The nudging. The other one is, if we're talking about behavior change, then the number one idea, number one thing to do is involve their managers in the process. So build your training campaign, build this campaign in a way that there is a certain role for people who will be giving feedback. If it's not a machine, if it's not a robot sending you something, then somebody has to be giving feedback to people. It can be managers very often, especially if we talk about values, behavior, examples, certain behaviors. But at the same time, these can be also clients, customers. These can be your partners. These can be your subordinates. These can be your colleagues. So because that feedback that comes from people is, of course, in certain very often is more valuable and more effective and more pressing to change than a machine.
Right. Okay. So if you're creating a training course, or as we know now, a training campaign, a prolonged process to change people's behavior, to make them better salespeople, or make them time manage better, then find those points of feedback. Think about them. Okay, they went through my course and they went back to their jobs and they started selling. How can they know if they're doing a good job? How can they know if they are applying things that I've taught them? We can ask them, get nudging and stuff. We can remind them, but can we train the managers to actually observe and give feedback? Should we do 2 courses, not just for them, but also for the managers?
Exactly.
And not on how to sell. They don't need to sell. They need to supervise those things. And can we embed it into, can we make customers somehow provide that feedback to them? Well, obviously in sales there is there's revenue. There is the amount of sales, but those yellow, green, and red buttons. That works. If we're working on customer service, let's install that as well, and let's share it with people.
Yeah, and most importantly, what I find very disappointing very often that. And this always, this kind of usually comes when they discuss about the training outcomes and how you measure return on investment. But same goes here, that there is a lot of data in the company. We already measure customer satisfaction. The marketing department can pinpoint to a certain shop or region or something, saying this is better here and this is worse there. But so often it is not connected to training. And so often if
not shared
with people who are trained, that if we're doing this customer service training, that people will rarely know how they were measured before this training, after this training. This will stay with the management, where this can go to the people.
Yeah, and that will help them get that feedback, and again, that can serve as a reminder, and so on and so on. I have like two different examples that I thought of yesterday when I was preparing for this. So one is if you talk about Latvia, that's Maxima shops. And people on their uniform, they have this ask me, jautājiet, varu palīdzēt, ask me, I can help.
Well, at least they used to have.
Oh yeah, they probably used to have, okay. That was a part of change campaign when they tried to improve customer service. And previously, if you approach any worker in the shop and ask them about something, they were like, that's not my job to know, right? Like, where do I find this? Like,
I don't know. I'm in this department.
I don't know. I'm in a different department. Yeah. And they tried to train them, and they did a great job on training them to be helpful and so on. But by putting those slogans on their uniform, they stimulated those conversations, right? They forced, like they stimulated shoppers to approach the employees and ask, and every time they ask something, well, that's the reminder, that's the feedback. So if you are trying to change something in your customer service or sales, stimulate customers to create those feedback loops. Stimulate them to actually do it, because otherwise you have, like, imagine if Maxima has trained everyone on the facts and policies of how we need to be helpful. They have even done this in a very creative and storytelling and immersive way so that everyone believes that, but then they just let it slide, and customers are not approaching because they know the people are not helpful there. And people will just forget about that aspect of their job immediately. Instead, they force the customers to approach them all the time so that people remember that we have to be helpful all the time until it gets into a habit and becomes the new normal.
Exactly.
Right? And another one is from a huge, like, Fortune 5 corporation in the United States.
Who is it? Sorry,
wait, no. Starts with an A. Anyhow, so I was in Seattle in their headquarters, and I noticed that all the employees in the office have this little papers, like plaques on their tables, which show some color coding. And I asked them about what is that, and it turns out that they have been all trained on personality types. They have all been tested on what personality they are, and let's say there are 3 types, A, B, C. Like there was a red, green, and blue personality, or it can be a mix of those. And they have been trained on how to structure conversations with people based on their personality types. And it would have been a great training, and you learned a lot about how people can be different, how you structure your conversation differently according to what that person is. But they also have made everyone display their personality type, their test result on their table. So when you come into someone's office and you sit down with them, you look at that, okay, this is the blue person.
Yeah.
Or this is the blue-green person. And I know how to talk to blue-green people. I have to, let's say, talk about facts more than feelings, or vice versa. And you look at that and you remember that there is this technique, and you start using that.
Right.
And you do that often enough, and you start doing it automatically. And wherever you go in that company, you have this constant reminder. Every time you have a conversation, you have a reminder of, this person has this certain personality type, and you remember you have been trained to work with that personality type. So try and work with that, and you will see how the results have improved. And this is the real life, like hardcore way to stimulate this remembrance, and make people come back to their training, other than just sending them emails and reminders. Like, make sure they get themselves into those situations where the training comes in handy.
And I think a takeaway for every person dealing with training or personnel development is to challenge ourselves, because very often we live in this world where there is the real world and the training world.
Yeah.
And we are kind of responsible for the training world, and we know that the real world is a bit different, and we just keep it as it is. And in my opinion, part of being a very successful and impactful training person is to start with the real world and come with those suggestions, what has to be done there. Because this is if you probably know this 10, 20, 70, this pyramid of how people learn. So 70% they are in this real world. And I think the key there, as Sergey said, is to finding those points where you can deal with this behavior. Sometimes they do already exist and you just have to use them. Sometimes you have to come up with them. You have to, for example, like you were saying with this color coding, you have to implement it. Because if there is something else about neuroscience and people behavior that I have learned, that it is very hard to change behavior. It is so, we know that, but people do change behaviors very quickly if they see the benefit of it.
Yeah.
We adopt new technologies, new skills, new ways of talking and working very easily if we see the benefit.
Yeah.
So this is something to think about.
Yeah, demonstrate that benefit and find points of contact with people outside of their kind of training space where they can be reminded and feel for themselves that, yes, there has been that benefit, right? So this is why you have mirrors in the gym. Right, so if you, to sum up three things you have to evaluate your training on. Are you using the whole brain, right? So the what is trained by spaced micro-learning. Like, don't expect people to sit through 2 hours of training and then go away
passively.
Passively, and just go and start doing stuff. Make sure that they have smaller chunks with time in between to reflect. Don't just give people facts, engage their emotions, make sure that they can live through that experience, live through their future selves, or live through their other party if you're training them on interacting with other people and so on. Make sure that there is not just factual aspect, but also, you know, the emotions, that you employ that part of the brain as well. And that real-time feedback, find ways to make sure that the training comes back to haunt them even after they leave. And don't think about your job as just the training. Think of your job as behavior change, and that does not happen in training. Just like muscle does not grow in the gym, it grows outside of the gym. That's the same thing happens to training. Right, so that's the takeaways, right? Employ the whole brain of the person. Engage them into training, not just give facts, and, you know, stimulate feedback, find those points of contact, go outside of your training world. That was, I wanted to say that was short, but, you know, we're actually 6 minutes away from the hour. That was not short, but that was intense, I think. Any questions that you might have? Everyone has been like a little bit, we did not give you enough time to reflect maybe, but
you will get your slides to reflect on.
You will get your slides. We hope you made notes. Did you find this useful? On a scale from useful to super useful,
where are we?
Where are we? Type in chat. Here's a question for you, by the way. What percentage of your training, like if you look at your whole training, super useful, yay. What percentage of your whole training employs all three, all two, and just, you know, the number one part of the brain? So do you have, like, do you think you have had campaigns that employed all three aspects of working with brains?
Anyone? Any campaign so far you've tried doing like that, or?
Yeah, and if you say so, we'll catch you, find you, and bring you to our next talk.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? As always, if you have any ideas, any topics you'd like us to cover, to prepare for you, we're still as open as always, and just let us know. While doing these breakfasts, it's a learning experience for us as well. We try to immerse in these topics, so that's always valuable. Anita says we tried, but really very hard to get the data out of different parts of the organization to overcome the resistance from other involved departments. Of course, if you, when you start touching the behavior side of things, you will get a lot of resistance. Kind of resistance is natural there. What I've seen sometimes, what works is to find those early adopters, find those open-minded department managers, team leads that are ready to experiment and do those kind of pilot kind of things, R&D kind of things, and then show the results to everyone else. Because of course, your managers, your C-level people, they assume they know how to do it. They assume they are at their best, but it's a good way to challenge them.
I would also say that it's near impossible to get the data post factum. So if you've done a sales training and then you come to the sales department and you ask them like,
give me the data.
Can we please see how the sales were before and after the training? That will not be useful, even if they wanted to. Probably they will not want to. So it's easier to come to them very early. Even before even a specific training, you can raise it at the C-level of your company, at the like board level of the company, and say, okay, we want to be our training more data-driven. Let's all together think about how that can be. Here's a couple of projects that we want to be data-driven first and foremost. We'll kind of pilot this approach with our next sales training or with our next, let's say, with our work-life balance training. So we want to start gathering data, and for that we'll need help from whoever you need help from, and kind of build up to that rather than come in posteriority and ask your IT people, like, can you tell us how many emails per day were we sending in January, and how many emails per day are we sending today? Because in between we've done this like 3-month campaign on getting rid of email, and they will be like, what? Why didn't you come earlier? Or what are you training?
What are you? Seriously.
Yeah. So yeah, it's important to come early, and that is a long path, but we hope that is useful even within the normal training realm of just preparing an online course. Thinking about all three things is incredibly helpful, and having the neuroscience to back you up, having the names of the brain parts is also very beneficial to actually talk.
The final probably comment from my side is to say that Sergey is completely right, that when we come at the training people and we talk about things, very often the others in the organization, they do not. They also expect us to be hard, and and a lot of people assume that training is something very soft and unclear in a black box, and nobody remembers anything kind of attitude. But taking these same slides we have here, and just telling these people, what, this is neuroscience. There's science word in it. It's based on research. So we have to utilize this, and that. And you want me to utilize this but achieve that, will not work.
Yeah, exactly. So you're trying to bridge like a 300-meter gap with a 100-meter bridge. Or 3 bridges.
Try that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a part of selling who you are in the organization, and I think utilizing science, researching it will help you, because no CEO will tell you that Harvard University lies on how people are change their behavior.
All right.
So thank you very much.
With that, thank you Thank you a lot for joining. We hope to see you next time. If you have ideas for us to pick up as topics, please share, email, write personally, and so on. We are about to start a YouTube channel as well. Here's a little spoiler alert for our favorite people in our breakfasts. The breakfast recordings are available as well. This one will be 2, and soon we'll be churning out, a little bit more content beyond breakfast that you can watch on your time. It will be based on our breakfast. So if you want to share these ideas with someone else, don't just ask for slides. Expect there will be a couple of videos that you can send your management, for example.
Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. We will notify when the channel is open. So far, this channel you are using for recording, it's more of a place where we store recordings. So we will deliver you content in a much shorter, concise, to the point manner that can be then used to distributor.
We're to the point enough. Come on, it's not like we're blabbering here.
No, of course not.
But anyhow,
thank you so much, everyone, and see you on our next breakfast.
Stay tuned.
Bye.